A human, two hearts, and the galaxy learned compassion. The galaxy had many rules. Most of them were old. Most of them were cold. Life beyond the stars had grown powerful but not kind. Strength was measured by logic, speed, and control. Feelings were seen as a flaw. Compassion was seen as a mistake. Across thousands of systems, this belief shaped empires. Humans arrived quietly. Their ships were small. Their technology was behind. Their voices were full of emotion. Other species watched them with interest, but also with doubt. Humans smiled too much. They spoke too openly. They cared too easily. That made them dangerous. On the edge of a disputed star route, a human vessel drifted after a failed jump. Its hull was damaged. Power was low. No weapons fired, no distress signals sent. A patrol ship from a nearby alliance found it. They boarded fast and careful. The aliens expected traps or lies. Instead, they found a single human survivor. He was unconscious. His body was thin. His clothes were torn. His hands were empty. When they scanned him, alarms filled the medical display, not because he was dying, but because his body did not match known patterns. The scanner showed two heart signals. The medical officer paused, then scanned again. The result did not change. Two hearts, both active, both strong. The human was taken alive. He was moved to a holding chamber on a research station built inside an asteroid. The place was quiet and white. The air was clean. The lights never changed. Time was measured only by shifts. When the human woke, he did not scream. His eyes opened slowly. He looked around. He saw the walls, the lights, the figures behind the glass. He breathed in, then out. A guard raised a weapon. The human did not move. His voice was weak but clear. He asked where he was. The question caused silence. No threats. No begging. No anger. Just a question. Doctors entered the room later. They spoke among themselves, using flat tones and short words. The human listened. He did not understand the language, but he understood the mood. They examined him carefully. His injuries were real. Burns, broken bone, internal damage. Enough to kill most beings. Yet, he lived. One doctor pointed to the chest scan. Two hearts. One slightly larger. One beating faster when stress rose. They tested him. Cold. Heat. Pressure. Isolation. The human suffered. His body shook. Sweat covered his skin. His breathing became rough, but he did not curse them. When asked questions through a translator device, he answered slowly. He said his name, but it was recorded and never spoken again. Names did not matter here. He said he was an explorer. He said his ship failed. He said he was afraid. That last word caused movement behind the glass. Fear was not usually admitted. The doctors noted something else. When the human spoke about others, his heart rate changed. Both hearts reacted. One sped up. The other slowed, then steadied. Emotion changed his body. That was not normal. Word spread through the station. A human with two hearts. A survivor. A mystery. Some saw him as a weapon waiting to be understood. Others saw him as a mistake that should be erased. The human was kept awake more often than allowed. Lights stayed on. Sounds were filtered to disturb rest. They wanted to see when he would break. He did not break. He grew quiet. During one test, a technician dropped a tool. It cut into their limb. Dark fluid spilled. The technician froze in pain. Before guards could react, the human moved. Despite restraints, despite weakness, he reached out. He pressed his hand against the wound. His voice was low and steady. He told the technician to breathe. The technician lived. That act changed nothing officially. But something shifted. The guard watching the scene looked away. Later, the human was returned to his cell. He sat against the wall. His breathing was slow. His eyes closed. His two hearts beat together. In another chamber, leaders watched recordings. They spoke of threats and risks. They spoke of control. One voice asked a question that had no place in the room. What if this is not weakness? No one answered. The human slept. Outside the station, stars burned without care. The galaxy continued as it always had. Strong, silent, unforgiving. But somewhere inside cold metal walls, a human with two hearts continued to live. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy felt something it did not understand. Unease. The human woke to another bright room. The walls were smooth, cold, and white. Machines hummed softly. He could hear voices behind glass, low and controlled, speaking in a language he did not know. A guard stood at the door. The human looked at him and nodded. The guard did not understand. The human's eyes were calm. There was no fear, but there was attention. He watched everything. The researchers began their work again. They measured his strength, his breathing, his heartbeats. The two hearts were unusual. One slowed when he remained still. The other pulsed faster when he moved. They tried heat, extreme cold, and loud noises. They expected panic. They expected failure. The human endured each test. His body shook, sweat dripped, and his breathing became uneven. But he did not break. No begging. No cries. No rebellion. Just quiet endurance. Each heartbeat told a story the machines could not read. One technician watched closely. She had never seen life like this. Her species measured courage as aggression, but this human showed calm and care. When she accidentally tripped over a cable, a heavy panel almost fell on her. The human moved before anyone could react. His hand reached out despite his restraints. He grabbed the edge and steadied it. The human did not hurt himself. He did not complain. He only looked at her and nodded. Some researchers whispered, "How could a fragile human survive so much pain? How could a being with two hearts move without panic?" One argued that the human was a living anomaly, and anomalies were dangerous. Another argued that maybe he could teach them something about life. They did not agree. Arguments became tension. Tension became fear. The human began to notice patterns. Each day had repetition. The lights never changed. Sounds came and went in predictable ways. He learned the names of some instruments. He learned the way machines responded to motion. Even without understanding the words, he understood routines. He practiced small movements. He stretched when no one watched. He sat quietly and listened to the hum of his station. One of his hearts slowed when he meditated. The other pulsed curious and alive. Rumors of his survival spread through the station. Guards whispered in corridors. Scientists argued quietly. Some began to question old rules. Could emotions be a strength, not a weakness? Could caring for others give life more power? They watched the human closely. They tested him more harshly. But each time he did not give them the reaction they expected. He did not beg. He did not fight. He simply endured and observed. Then came the day of the reactor test. The human was placed near a containment field while a team ran simulations. The experiment measured stress limits. One technician was adjusting the field and made a small mistake. Sparks flew. A panel cracked. A hot surge of energy shot toward the technician. Alarms screamed. Machines blinked red. Panic filled the room. Guards shouted orders. But the human acted first. He pushed against the restraints. His body moved faster than expected. He reached the technician. His hands caught the falling panel. The hot energy singed his arm. He felt the burn, the pain, the heat. But he did not falter. He helped the technician move back to safety. After the event, the station was quiet. People stared at the human. The guards no longer saw him as weak. The researchers no longer saw him as simple. Something had changed. They could not explain it, but the human had changed the energy in the room. Calm replaced panic. Relief replaced fear. Even the cold machine seemed less threatening in his presence. A young alien doctor new to the station approached the human in secret. She had watched him from behind a glass wall. She asked if he was afraid. He paused. Then he nodded slightly. That small gesture surprised her. Most beings would scream, fight, or beg, but he admitted fear quietly, calmly. She realized that fear did not control him. He controlled fear. She left without saying a word, but she carried the image with her. His quiet courage, his steady heartbeat, his care for another life in danger. The Council of Leaders received reports. Some called the human a threat. Some called him a miracle. They debated in secret. Could this human, with 2 hearts and strange endurance, change the balance of power? Was he dangerous because he survived? Was he dangerous because he cared? They decided to observe further, but their attention was divided. Some secretly planned to push him to limits he could not survive. Others secretly hoped he would survive. The human slept little. Each night he sat quietly, feeling the hum of the station, feeling the heartbeat of his 2 hearts. He thought about the stars outside the walls. He thought about his crew, his failed mission, and the humans he left behind. His mind worked even when his body rested. Each heartbeat reminded him that he had survived before. Each heartbeat reminded him that he must survive again. He knew he was alone in this station. He knew he was watched constantly. He did not complain. He simply prepared. Then, the first real contact came. A small shuttle arrived at the station. Its mission was not public. The crew moved silently, expecting only a human body, a study subject. They were not ready for life. The human, now aware of patterns and routines, saw them before they saw him. He remained calm. He waited. He listened. When they entered the lab, he spoke. His voice was clear, steady. He asked a simple question. Why are you here? The crew froze. The guards froze. The scientists froze. None expected words, let alone questions. His calm gaze held theirs. One of the crew whispered to another, afraid to break the moment. The human did not flinch. His 2 hearts beat in rhythm, steady, strong. That was enough to make the room shift. Something in them changed. They could feel, even if they did not understand. The human had survived everything, and now he faced more danger with the same quiet strength. By the end of the day, the human was no longer just a subject. He was a symbol, not yet understood, not yet appreciated, but a symbol. He had survived experiments meant to break him. He had saved life when no one expected it. He had shown courage without violence. And the galaxy, far beyond the walls of the station, began to stir with questions it had never asked before. The human sat against the cold wall, his eyes closed. One heart pulsed slow, calm, steady. The other pulsed faster, alive with awareness and care. He felt pain and exhaustion, but also purpose. He had survived this far. He would survive further. And somewhere in the quiet hidden behind metal and glass, the first seeds of change began to grow. A human, fragile in appearance but strong in spirit, had shown that survival was not only about strength. It was about patience, endurance, and care for life, even when no one else cared. The station had grown tense over the past weeks. The human was no longer just a subject to watch. He had become an example of endurance and calm that unsettled even the most disciplined officers. Guards whispered about his strength. Scientists argued about his unusual biology. Even the council had begun to take notice, though they spoke in secret. The station, isolated in an asteroid field, seemed safe. But beyond the walls, danger was moving faster than anyone expected. One morning, alarms blared across the station. Lights flashed red. Sensors detected a fleet approaching at high speed. The attackers were not ordinary pirates. They were a violent alien faction that despised species who showed care or compassion. They saw emotion as weakness and life as a tool for power. The station's shields were tested immediately. Panels shook. Power grids overloaded. Orders shouted through hallways. Panic spread faster than fire. The human watched from his cell. He could feel the vibrations through the floor. He could hear the panic in the voices outside. His 2 hearts beat differently. One slowed, steady, and calm. The other raced, alive and aware. He had survived so much already, and he understood the danger more clearly than the guards. They were trained to obey. They were trained to follow orders. But chaos broke all training. Fear made them hesitate. Some ran, some froze. When the first warning lights went off in the medical section, the humans saw a technician trapped under falling debris. Others shouted for help, but they were too afraid to move. Without waiting, the human pushed against the restraints that bound him. They were designed to stop even the strongest of beings. He forced them open, surprising the guards. No one expected the human to act. They had always thought him fragile. He moved quickly through the corridors. The station shook with every impact of the attackers' weapons. Sparks fell from the ceilings. Panels cracked. Fire began in some sectors. Still, he moved. He reached the trapped technician and lifted the debris with careful strength. The human did not scream. He did not complain about the pain in his arms or the burn on his hands. He guided the injured technician to a safer corridor and pressed his hands to wounds, telling them to breathe, to hold on. Other aliens saw what he was doing. Some froze, unsure if they should help or follow orders. Some realized that the human was showing courage they had never seen. Slowly, they moved. Slowly, they helped. The human did not command. He simply acted. His calm focus inspired them without words. Guards who had once threatened him now moved alongside him. Scientists who had once watched in fear now lifted debris, opened doors, and guided the wounded. The attacking fleet reached the outer shields, weapons fired. Explosions rocked the station. Some sections were damaged beyond repair. Panic was everywhere. Yet in the center of the chaos, the human remained steady. One heart kept him alive. The other gave him awareness of the danger, awareness of others, and awareness of what had to be done. Every step he took, every action he performed, protected more lives than anyone could count. He found more trapped personnel in the engineering bay. They were surrounded by sparks and leaking energy conduits. The human pushed forward, ignoring the sharp heat against his skin. He helped each one escape, moving faster than expected for his size. His two hearts worked together. One handled the physical strain. The other managed the awareness, the calculation, the rhythm of danger. He was a strange mixture of biology and focus no alien had ever seen. News spread through the station. This human was saving lives. This human was more capable than trained guards. This human was not afraid, even when everyone else was. Those who had doubted him before began to feel a strange emotion they did not recognize. Respect, perhaps, or something more dangerous. Hope. They could survive if they acted together, if they followed the human's example of courage and care. The fleet attacked again. Some ships breached outer shields. Sections of the station were losing power. The human moved through corridors filled with smoke and fire, guiding the wounded. A small group of aliens had begun to follow him, mimicking his calm focus. Together, they moved efficiently. Together, they saved more lives. Together, they fought chaos with cooperation, not weapons. Their actions slowed the collapse of the station. A command center officer watching from a secure chamber realized that the station might survive because of the human. He could not believe it. The human had no authority. The human had no command. He had no weapons. And yet, his courage and care had united the crew. Cooperation had become the only weapon strong enough to hold back destruction. By the time the attackers reached the inner sections, they faced a new problem. The station was not defenseless, but it was united. Humans and aliens worked side by side. Shields were reinforced. Escape routes cleared. Injured were moved. Panic was replaced with focus. The human never shouted. He never demanded. He only acted. Calm, precise, aware. Every heartbeat, every movement inspired others. The attackers, seeing the unexpected organization and resistance, paused. They had expected fear, chaos, and surrender. Instead, they found determination. They found beings working together without command. They had underestimated the power of courage and care. For the first time, they hesitated. Their weapons faltered. Their ships slowed. They were not prepared for the unexpected strength of life working together. In the final moments of the battle, a large explosion struck a damaged sector. Many guards and technicians were trapped. A human ran toward them. His two hearts carried him faster than before. He pulled the injured to safety. A group of aliens followed him without thinking, simply moved by the example he set. Every life he saved became a symbol of what could happen if beings cared for each other. After hours of chaos, the attackers retreated. They left the station in partial ruin, but the people alive were more numerous than expected. The human, exhausted, stood in the center of the command corridor. His two hearts beat heavily, one slow and steady, one alive with awareness and exhaustion. The station had survived not because of weapons, not because of orders, not because of strategy. It had survived because of courage, care, and cooperation inspired by one human. The crew, exhausted and shaken, looked at him. They could not explain what they had witnessed. The human did not boast. He only spoke quietly, telling the wounded to rest, guiding them to safety, and checking the station's integrity. He had become more than a subject, more than a survivor. He had become a symbol, not yet fully understood, but impossible to ignore. In the council chambers far away, news of the event reached leaders. They argued in fear and fascination. A single human had held a station against a superior attacking force. The reports could not describe the quiet courage, the focus, and the care that had saved lives. Some called it dangerous. Others called it miraculous. The human had shown that strength was not always measured by weapons or training. Sometimes it was measured by endurance, compassion, and patience. By the end of the day, the station began repairs. Survivors worked together, inspired by the human's example. Guards no longer treated him as fragile. Scientists no longer treated him as strange. He moved quietly among them, helping, observing, guiding, saving where he could. One heart kept him alive. One heart guided others. The galaxy, far beyond the walls, did not yet know it, but a human had changed something fundamental about how life could survive. The human sat against a wall when night came. Light still hummed. Sparks still fell in damaged sectors. His body ached. Sweat dripped. Burns stung. Broken ribs reminded him of the last attack. Yet his eyes were calm. One heart beat slow, steady. The other beat alert, alive with awareness of others. Around him, aliens moved in coordinated care, slowly learning that survival was not only strength but cooperation. Outside the station, the stars burned without care. The galaxy remained vast, cold, and indifferent. But inside, a human with two hearts had changed the rules. Chaos had been defeated not by fire or steel, but by courage, care, and the quiet endurance of one life that refused to break. And for the first time, the galaxy began to notice that there might be power in something it had always dismissed: compassion. Repairs continued day and night. Damaged halls were sealed. Burned walls were replaced. Power lines were rebuilt. But the people were different. Guards spoke more softly. Scientists paused before giving orders. Many eyes followed the human as he moved through the corridors. He was no longer locked in a cell. The council had ordered him moved to an open medical wing. Officially, it was for recovery. Unofficially, no one dared to restrain him again. Too many had seen what he had done. Too many owed their lives to him. His body was injured. Burns marked his arms and side. His ribs were cracked. His steps were slower now. One heart beat steady, working hard to keep him alive. The other beat unevenly at times, strained by stress and exhaustion. Doctors noticed this. They whispered among themselves. They did not know how long a human body could carry such a burden. Messages traveled across the stars. Reports were sent to central worlds. A human prisoner had saved a station. A human with two hearts had inspired unity without command. Some leaders dismissed the reports as exaggeration. Others demanded proof. Proof arrived soon. A transport vessel docked with the station. It carried observers from the Central Council. Their presence filled the halls with tension. These were beings who ruled systems, who decided the fate of species. They were used to silence and obedience. They expected to see a subject, They saw a human walking freely among alien crews, helping repair teams, guiding the injured, speaking calmly, listening more than he spoke. This unsettled them. The council members demanded a formal meeting. The human was escorted, not restrained, to a chamber of wide glass walls and floating platforms. He walked slowly, breathing carefully. His injuries still hurt, but his eyes were clear. The chamber filled with voices. Some council members spoke of danger. A human like this could inspire rebellion. Emotions spread like fire. Compassion weakened control. Others spoke of opportunity. This human had stopped panic. He had united species without violence. Perhaps this was a new kind of strength. The human listened. When it was his turn to speak, the chamber fell silent. Translators activated. All eyes focused on him. He did not raise his voice. He said he did not come to conquer. He said he did not come to teach. He said he only wanted to survive, and help others survive too. He said fear made beings cruel, and care made them strong. Some council members shifted uncomfortably. He spoke of the attack. He spoke of seeing people frozen by fear. He spoke of choosing to move anyway. He did not claim heroism. He said anyone could have done the same. That statement disturbed them more than pride would have. After the meeting, the council withdrew to debate. Their discussions were long and sharp. Some demanded the human be removed quietly. Others argued that killing him would make him a symbol too powerful to erase. While they argued, shadows moved. A small group within the council believed compassion was a threat to order. They believed the human had already done too much damage. They planned quietly, using old channels, trusted operatives, and silence. The human felt the change before anyone told him. His second heart began to beat irregularly. Sharp pain struck his chest without warning. Doctors rushed to him. Scans showed stress beyond safe limits. His body had endured too much for too long. They tried to stabilize him. At the same time, systems failed in small, quiet ways. Doors delayed opening. Lights flickered. Security feeds paused for a breath too long. The signs were subtle, but dangerous. One of the doctors noticed unfamiliar access codes in the medical network. She froze. She understood too late. An attack was coming. The human lay on a medical bed, struggling to breathe. One heart slowed dangerously. The other raced, trying to compensate. Machines beeped urgently. Doctors worked fast, but their technology was not designed for two hearts under such strain. Outside the room, alarms did not sound. That was the worst sign. A figure entered the corridor, moving calmly, dressed as a technician. Guards glanced once, then looked away. Orders had been altered. Clearances changed. Inside the medical room, the human opened his eyes. Pain clouded his vision, but his awareness remained. He sensed movement. He sensed danger. His second heart reacted, pushing awareness even as his body weakened. The door slid open. The figure raised a device. Before it could fire, a guard stepped forward. The same guard who had once watched the human in silence. The guard hesitated only a moment, then acted. He struck the attacker. The device fell. Chaos erupted. Alarms finally screamed. Security flooded the corridor. The attacker was restrained. More were found elsewhere on the station. The plot unraveled quickly once exposed. The secret faction had failed. But the damage was done. The human's condition worsened. Doctors worked without pause. Aliens from different species gathered outside the medical wing. They waited in silence. Some held tools. Some held nothing. None left. The council received word of the attempt. Shame spread through their ranks. They could no longer deny the truth. This human had changed them. Even those who feared him had acted because they feared what he represented. Hours passed. The human drifted in and out of awareness. Memories blurred. Stars, voices, pain, calm. His two hearts struggled to find rhythm again. Then something unexpected happened. An engineer suggested an idea no council protocol allowed. Share energy. Share systems. Use multiple technologies together. Risk contamination. Risk failure. The council hesitated. The crowd outside the medical wing did not. One by one, species offered help. Power cells. Biosupport fields. Medical techniques once kept secret. They connected systems never meant to work together. Doctors adapted fast. The humans' hearts responded. One stabilized, then the other followed. The machines quieted. Breathing slowed. A life that should have ended did not. When the human finally woke, the room was full. Doctors, guards, scientists, council members. They watched quietly as his eyes opened. He looked at them. He tried to speak. A doctor gently told him to rest. He nodded. That single motion carried more weight than any speech. The council made a decision soon after. Old laws were suspended. The human was no longer a prisoner. He was declared a protected envoy, not of power, but of understanding. It was not a perfect decision. Many opposed it. But it was enough to begin change. Across the station, whispers spread. Across nearby systems, stories followed. A human with 2 hearts had survived an attack not meant to fail. He had lived because many chose to care. The galaxy felt the shift. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But deeply. The human rested, weak but alive. His 2 hearts beat together again. One for survival, one for awareness. Around him, a station rebuilt not just its walls, but its beliefs. And far away, forces that hated this change watched closely. They would not stop. Not yet. His body rested in the medical wing, surrounded by quiet machines and careful watchers. His 2 hearts beat together most of the time, but not always. Sometimes one slowed too much. Sometimes the other raced without reason. Doctors adjusted systems hour by hour. They spoke softly now, as if loud voices might disturb more than sleep. Across the station, life continued in a different way than before. People worked together without being told. Guards helped engineers. Scientists shared tools and ideas. Species that once avoided each other now stood side by side. No law had forced this. No command had ordered it. It happened because they had seen what cooperation could do. News spread beyond the station. At first it traveled as reports and data, then as stories, then as arguments. A human with 2 hearts had survived impossible stress. A human had saved a station without weapons. A human had lived because many species chose to help instead of hide. Some worlds listened with curiosity, some with fear, and some with anger. Far from the station, in regions ruled by strict control and old beliefs, leaders gathered. They watched the changes spreading through nearby systems. Trade routes shifted, alliances softened, orders were questioned, compassion was spreading. To them that was unacceptable. They decided on a final action. A fleet gathered in silence, larger than before, better armed, faster. This time they would not test. They would erase. The station was a symbol now. Symbols could not be allowed to live. Warnings reached the station too late. Long-range sensors detected movement only moments before the fleet entered firing range. Alarms sounded again, sharper than before. But this time, panic did not rise as fast. Crews moved. Shields powered up. Damage control teams took positions. Evacuation plans activated, not in chaos, but in order. The lessons of the last attack had been learned. Still, the enemy force was overwhelming. In the medical wing, doctors felt the tremor of distant impacts. One looked at the human, still unconscious. Another whispered what everyone feared. If the station fell, he would not survive evacuation. The human's second heart reacted before any alarm reached his mind. His body stirred. His breathing changed. Pain surged as awareness returned. He opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling lights blurred. He tried to move. Doctors rushed to stop him, but he raised a hand weakly. He listened. He felt the vibration in the floor. He understood. The attack had come again. He pushed himself upright, ignoring the sharp pain in his chest. One heart protested, the other pushed forward, urgent, focused. Doctors argued, but he shook his head. He did not speak much. He only said he had to stand. Word spread quickly. The human was awake. The news moved through the station faster than any command. Crews straightened. Guards held positions longer. Engineers pushed harder. Just knowing he was conscious changed the mood. He did not go to the command center. He walked the corridors. Slowly at first, then steadier. Aliens stepped aside, not in fear but in respect. Some followed him. He did not ask them to. He did not lead with words. He led by presence. Fires broke out in one sector. He moved there. A hull breach threatened another. He went there too. Each step hurt. Each breath burned, but his two hearts worked together, one driving survival, the other guiding awareness of others. The enemy fleet struck harder. Shields failed in sections. Weapons tore into the station's outer layers. Casualties rose, and still the station held, because people did not run, they stayed. In one damaged hangar, a group of young crew members froze under falling debris. The human reached them moments before collapse. He pulled them clear, his body screaming in pain. One of his hearts faltered. He nearly fell. An alien caught him. For a moment, they looked at each other. No words were needed. They moved on together. In the command center, officers watched battle data scroll faster than they could process. Losses mounted. Someone whispered that they could not win. Another replied quietly that they could endure. The difference mattered. The enemy commander, watching from afar, grew frustrated. This station should have fallen quickly. Instead, resistance was coordinated. Damage control was efficient. Morale was high, too high. They ordered a direct strike on the station's core. If that failed, nothing else would matter. Warnings flashed across every screen. Evacuation became urgent. The human felt it before the announcement finished. His second heart surged, sending clarity through pain. He knew where the strike would hit. He changed direction. Doctors shouted after him. Guards tried to stop him. He did not stop. He reached the core access corridor just as explosions rocked the outer ring. Radiation leaked. Heat filled the air. Automatic systems failed. A small team followed him, knowing the risk. Inside the core chamber, systems overloaded.
A meltdown would destroy everything.
The human moved to the central controls. His hands shook. His vision blurred. One heart struggled to keep rhythm. He focused. He remembered the calm he had practiced in isolation. He slowed his breathing. One heart steadied. The other followed. Together, with help from the team, he rerouted power, stabilized the core, and vented excess energy. It was not clean. It was not perfect. But it worked. The strike hit seconds later. The station shook violently. Sections collapsed. But the core held. Outside, the enemy fleet hesitated. Their final blow had failed. They had expected fear. They saw endurance. They withdrew. Silence followed, broken only by distant alarms and falling debris. The human collapsed. He did not fall alone. Hands caught him. Many hands. He was carried back to the medical wing as systems stabilized and repairs began again. Doctors worked fast. His hearts were dangerously strained now. One slowed too much. The other raced wildly. Machines worked harder than ever. Outside the medical wing, the station gathered again. This time not in fear, but in gratitude. The council arrived soon after. They looked at the damage. They looked at the people working together. They looked at the human fighting for life again. Something broke inside them. Old rules no longer fit this reality. They made announcements across the station and beyond. Emergency powers were shared. Restrictions on cooperation were lifted. Mixed teams were authorized everywhere. The galaxy listened. Some cheered. Some resisted, but none could ignore it now. Hours later, the human's condition stabilized. Barely. Doctors said he would live, but he would never be the same. His hearts had carried too much. His strength would not return fully. When he woke, the room was quiet. He saw familiar faces, different species, different shapes, all watching him with care. He tried to smile. It hurt, but he did. The station survived again, not because it was strong, but because it refused to abandon compassion, even when it nearly died. And far beyond the stars, forces that opposed this change realized something dangerous. The galaxy had tasted a new way to survive, and it would not forget it easily. The galaxy had changed. It did not happen overnight. It happened slowly, quietly, through countless acts of care and endurance. Worlds once ruled by fear began to notice something different. Cooperation and compassion spread like a tide. Some species resisted. Others embraced it. The balance of power shifted, not through weapons, but through the choice to value life beyond mere survival. The human had survived countless trials. His body bore the scars of battle, fire, and exhaustion. His two hearts had carried him through impossible strain. One heart for survival, steady and strong. One heart for awareness, compassionate and alive. He had become more than a human. He had become a symbol, a living example of endurance and care. He walked through a space station far larger and older than the one he had saved years before. It was a station filled with multiple species working together. Aliens of every shape and color moved alongside humans. Guards were no longer armed to intimidate but to protect. Engineers repaired systems with guidance from different species. Young beings trained together, learning not just science or technology, but also cooperation. The human observed quietly. He did not command. He did not lecture. He only moved, helping where needed, speaking calmly when asked. A young alien tripped on a panel. He was there in an instant, steadying them, smiling with care. A technician hesitated at a control interface. The human approached, showing without words how to handle it. Every action inspired others to move, to act, to care. Leaders of the council gathered for a long session. They spoke of new systems, new rules, and new ways to prevent destruction. They no longer debated whether emotions were weakness. They debated how compassion could strengthen them. The human was present, but he said little. He had learned that change came not from speech, but from example. His presence alone guided decisions more than any argument. Across multiple worlds, records showed the effects. Trade agreements improved. Conflicts were resolved faster. Alliances formed across species that once fought endlessly. Scholars wrote about the human's actions, not as hero stories, but as lessons. Children in schools learned about patience, endurance, and care. One heart for survival, one heart for compassion. The lesson was simple, but its impact was profound. Not all accepted it. Some systems still feared weakness. Some fleets remained ready to strike. But each act of compassion made resistance weaker. Every time a life was saved because someone chose to care, the galaxy's old rules of fear lost power. The human story spread like fire in the stars. Not as myth, but as living example. The human grew older. He did not lead armies. He did not rule worlds. He walked quietly, healed where possible, taught where asked, and acted when needed. His two hearts continued to beat, one steady, one alive with awareness. Sometimes they hurt him, reminding him of all he had endured. Sometimes they carried him, reminding him of all he could give. One day a young group of humans approached him. They had traveled from a distant colony, having heard stories of the human who survived impossible trials. They asked for advice, for guidance. The human smiled softly. He spoke in simple words, telling them to notice those around them, to care, to endure, to act even when others hesitate. They listened wide-eyed, and learned more from watching his calm movements than from any speech. Elsewhere, the council monitored conflicts across the galaxy. A minor war had erupted on a distant planet. A fleet of multiple species was sent to intervene. They prepared for battle, but the humans' lessons had spread. Cooperation was taught first. Understanding came before weapons. When they arrived, the fleet mediated the conflict with care. weapons remained unused. Lives were spared. Even the leaders of the warring factions found themselves acting together. The galaxy began to see a pattern. Compassion was stronger than force. The human watched these developments quietly. He remembered the first station, the first attacks, the pain of his body, and the fear in the eyes of those he saved. He remembered the second heart that never stopped thinking, never stopped caring, even when the first heart struggled to keep him alive. He understood that life was fragile, but awareness could make it stronger. Survival alone was not enough. Life mattered only when it cared for others. Years passed. Systems continued to integrate. Trade routes became paths of shared knowledge, not just commerce. Scientists cooperated across species. Soldiers trained in protection, not aggression. Children grew learning that compassion was not weakness, but strength. The human's example became legend, taught in schools and space academies. One heart for survival, one heart for compassion, always together. Always alive. One quiet evening, the human stood at a large observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly before him. Worlds spun quietly in the distance. He felt both hearts beat in harmony, one steady, one alive. Both reminded him of all he had endured and all he had given. A group of young aliens approached, sitting nearby in silence. They did not speak at first. They watched him. They learned without words. Finally, one asked a simple question. "Why do you do it?" The human smiled softly. He did not answer with great speech. He only said, "Because it matters." The group nodded, understanding more than words could explain. Across the galaxy, billions of lives carried the same lesson. Compassion had become a tool as powerful as any weapon. Endurance was measured not just by survival, but by care for others. And one human, with two hearts, had shown them all the way. The stars continued to shine. The galaxy remained vast and unpredictable. Conflicts would come again. Hardships would arise. But life had changed. One heart for survival, one heart for compassion. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were human. And in that quiet knowledge, the galaxy learned to care. Part 6 concludes the full story arc. The human's legacy transforms the galaxy through endurance, compassion, and example. If you want, I can now compile all 6 parts into a single formatted document, ready for reading or narration, keeping each part separate but in order. This will make it easier to use for YouTube or storytelling.
Do you want me to do that?